This is for telling people John is strong. This is for saying you don't like Louis Simmons. And this is for saying dickhole song.
Welcome to the Weekly Rant! Well, folks, congratulations. You made it another week on this dumpster fire we call Earth. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Hey, did you know there's an election going on here in Canada? Yes, by the way, as some of you know, I am in fact Canadian, which is why I've always had the utmost respect for a good beaver. One thing I don't respect, though, is how underwhelming this election has been. Like, Canada is facing some very serious issues right now. Cost of living, cost of housing, a stagnant job market, immigration overflow, population age disparity, pending World War III, central bank collapse, and the continued disregard for our Indigenous people. But this is what our candidates for Prime Minister are talking about. As you can see here, Pierre Poilievre seemed more concerned with the Liberal candidate Mark Carney's haircut. His haircut. I'm deadly serious. This is a real article from fucking a multi-million-dollar funded news organization. Meanwhile, you got Jagmeet Singh saying that they should postpone the French election for a hockey game. Whatever. And then here's Mark Carney. Take a listen to this.
In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage. Politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights. And the issue in using by the federal government, I'll stop here, is not where you start, but where will you stop?
Oh, you mean like exactly what your master Trudeau and the Liberals did to the trucker convoy? Jesus Christ. What is happening? How are people taking this shit seriously? He's acting like he cares about the freedom of people while actively promoting a government that would lock up any protester that doesn't fit their narrative. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Hey, you got to take these, by the way.
Anyways, like I was saying, back to the Canadian election. They are bickering at each other like school children. Meanwhile, our country is burning. Oh, hey, by the way, Carney, here's an idea for you, because it does look like you will inevitably win this election. You remember how Justin Trudeau promised way back in 2015 that he would repeal the Anti-Terrorism Act that Harper put in place? You know, you remember, right? Bill C-51. Back in 2015, the Liberal Party couldn't stop talking about how dangerous that bill was. A threat to democracy, you said. And for once, I actually agreed with Justin on that point. But funnily enough, here we are, over 10 years later, and the Anti-Terrorism Act is still very much in place. For 10 years, I worked on Parliament Hill in the annals of history in Canada, and it amazes me that from that time, starting way back in 2012, all the way to now, the parties are still arguing with each other over the same issues, the same exact issues. Is any one of you cowards going to call out the price gouging at the grocery stores? Yes, I'm talking to you Loblaws, Sobeys, and all the rest of them. Or how about breaking up the telecommunication monopoly, which forces our citizens here in Canada to pay more to have a cell phone than any other developed country in the world? But no. Let's keep arguing about whether we should put pot dealers in jail or whether abortion should be, penalized with the death penalty. Like, Jesus Christ. Can we move on to the real issues here, people? Some will say Canada is cooked. And I'd be inclined to agree with them if it wasn't for one thing. The beaver, folks. Yes, the beaver. Get your heads out of the gutter. I'm talking about the largest rodent in North America, a keystone figure in the natural ecosystem, a pillar of nature. But they are so much more than that, folks. When you think of all the assholes you've eaten over the years, you don't immediately think of beavers. But you have eaten a beaver's asshole, my friends. You see, beavers produce castor oil. And castor oil is one of the main flavor agents in artificial vanilla, and therefore a staple in vanilla ice cream. which is frankly delicious. We're talking about an animal with naturally secreting vanilla asshole here, folks. The beaver is also the only animal other than humans whose constructions can be seen from space. They're some of the best goddamn engineers on the planet. And you will show the beaver respect. Without beavers, you can say goodbye to biodiversity because these motherfuckers are out there fucking up habitats to the point that new species emerge. Who else can say that? Did I mention they have iron teeth? Plus, I mean, look at this. Look at this fucking guy. Look at him. He's got 3 carrots. He's got a carrot in his mouth. I fucking love beavers. And if you don't, then I frankly don't want to know you. Long live the beaver. And now, a quick commercial break. Hey, you guys heard of the wellness company? Hey, let's go. What do you know? Hey, these guys have been a partner with the channel now for 6 months. They're the best partner we've ever had. They got our back. Now it's time for you guys to get prepared for what's coming. We don't know whether it's World War III, a pandemic, maybe both, recession, trade war. You know, there's so many fun options. The wellness company has got you covered. They have the contagion kit, which comes with ivermectin, Z-Pack, among other medications that will be increasingly difficult to get. They also have standard first aid kits. They have a spike protein detox if you happened to be a good soldier like I was during the pandemic and you got the thingy and maybe you're a little concerned about some of the remnants. Guys, they also have a spike protein detox you can get if you are worried about nanoparticles in your blood or something crazy like that. Do the spike protein detox. Honestly, I did it and I've noticed blood flow is way up. Anyways, guys, shout out to the wellness company. Go to the link in bio, use promo code 4REAL, and you'll get 10% off any order, up to $60 on some items. They also have a parasitic cleanse right now, a parasite detox, which would be worth looking into. Thank you, wellness company. Boom. And now it's time for the rapid fire segment of the show. All right. Well, folks, the Pope croaked on Easter Monday this year. I guess you could say the Pope was at the end of his rope. But hey, can you blame the guy? Poor bastard was forced to sit down and talk with J.D. Vance. I mean, yeah, I get why he wanted to go. And in other news, Klaus Schwab has stepped down from his role as president of the WEF on the very same day the Pope died. It was actually within hours of the Pope's death. Leave it to Klaus Schwab to try and steal the Pope's thunder. And while people were quick to rejoice in the fact that this modern day real life Bond villain is finally out of the picture, their celebrations were cut short when the WEF announced on Tuesday that former CEO of Nestle will be taking over in Schwab's place. You know the guy that wanted to buy all the water in the world. But hey, I'm sure he just wants to help humanity by killing all of us. Germany is clamping down on bullying and harassment with a series of new laws surrounding online insults and bullying, with a recent interview going viral in which a government representative explains that online harassment of immigrants, politicians, or even political parties might actually warrant a more severe punishment than good old-fashioned face-to-face bullying. Given that the online comments will stay in existence for much longer, they are justifying harsher sentences. And I think it's a great move by the German government because, we got to hold the German citizens accountable because, really, let's be honest, what's the German government ever done to them, hey? Or like the world or... I think it's great. I think it's great that they're making laws which prevent us from criticizing governments. Definitely a step in the right direction. Mein Führer. And in other news, the White House released a brand new webpage which took the internet by storm last week. Schmovid.gov. Yes, we live in a world where I can't even say the fucking word. Schmovid.gov, which revealed that Trump and his administration are essentially blaming China and the Wuhan coronavirus laboratories for leaking the Schmovid virus, which would ultimately lead to the worldwide pandemic, which has set the entire world back a few decades, give or take. Here's the thing, though. Did you guys know that in 2019, Fort Detrick in Maryland was shut down by the CDC for conducting dangerous germ experiments? Did you know that there are footprints in the COVID virus that go all the way back to a lab in Manitoba, Canada, where a Chinese double agent scientist was working and allegedly smuggled it out of Canada? So at the end of the day, I think it was a team effort, guys. I think we did a great job, worldwide collaboration. Excellent stuff. And now, my favorite segment of the show, which I like to refer to as having a conversation with your drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. It's the Rant segment. Look, yet again, we had a series of tragic shootings down in America. Obviously, you would like to think that at the top of everyone's minds, people would be concerned with the victims, maybe even the family of the perpetrator. Just the entire loss would be the focus, right? But no. The media, whether it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, ABC, they are all culpable. And they all fucking did the same thing. They tried. All I could see the whole week, FSU. It's like, what about the victims? Nope. We're just going to try and pinpoint which political party the perpetrator, the shooter, affiliated with. Can I ask why that fucking matters? The dude is mentally deranged. Like his opinion, when you go on a rampage and kill innocent people, your opinion on politics and pretty much anything is kind of null and void, isn't it? Because you're clearly mentally gone. So what has happened to our society where rather than show empathy for victims, all we try and do is find some fucking political party or political affiliation or ideology to blame? I'm at a loss for words. And listen, let's have the tough conversation, shall we, folks? Like, I understand that a lot of people don't trust their government to keep them or their families safe. And I don't blame you for thinking that. They can't, and they don't care about you. That is true. Except for my government, and I love my government. I want to make that clear. But they don't care about you, though. So listen. What I'm saying to you is I understand reasoning for wanting to own firearms in America and anywhere else. Having said that, you guys do understand that? Just listen, I'm an outsider. I am not an American. We've been over this. Long live the beaver. But here's the thing. From an outsider's perspective, there is no other country in the world which affiliates democracy with gun ownership. And I'm going to explain to you why that is. It's decades and decades of propaganda. I'm not even talking about propaganda from Republicans or Democrats now. I'm talking about the NRA, the gun companies that make money from selling you guns. I need a crazy pill. I'm going to take a crazy pill. Listen, at the end of the day, if we do ever have to, rise up and have a whatever, schmevolution, do you think guns are going to do much against infinite lasers and space weapons that can melt our insides like a fucking microwave? I'm just saying. But I don't know. Having said that, frankly, I guess Afghanistan and, Vietnam, they did pretty good with some guns and some huts. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think the main point I'm trying to say here is stop fighting with each other. Stop downplaying the tragedies. Start focusing on the victims. Fuck the shooter. I'm never going to say their name on this show. I promise you guys that. A shooter's name will never be said on this show. But I will happily say it is a tragic loss of Robert Morales and Turu Chaba. All the best to their families. And please, guys, don't just focus. I know I just said a lot of stuff. The words poured out of my mouth like so much verbal diarrhea. But Please don't just get hung up on the one thing I might have said that you don't like or don't agree with. Think about the entire message. Empathy, the root of the problem, mental illness, a society with a lot of, depressed anger, a lot of people on the edge of their seats, a lot of people struggling to afford everyday life right now. Let's have some fucking empathy for each other and stop trying to pin this on what ideology a person subscribes to. Because at the end of the day, we all subscribe to the same thing, Tom. Humanity. And now, folks, with a special segment brought to you by trusted correspondent of the Weekly Rot, Jacob Buston. He's out there in New Brunswick doing the Lord's work, and he attended both a Liberal and a Conservative rally over the last couple of weeks. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that went.
So I've been trying to get into the Mark Carney rally, and every time I try to get in, they tell me that I need a QR code in order to get access. I finally got my QR code, so I'm going to see if we get scanned in. Alright, so I got my QR code finally.
Did you? Yes. How did you use that?
Well, I got connections from the Liberal Party, but I told you that Mark Carney and I are best friends, right? So I don't know if you want to scan that.
It doesn't look like the others.
Well, it's a QR code. It looks exactly like that one on that sign.
I wouldn't scan it. Something crazy. Is this going to be a virus on my...
No, definitely not. I would never do that. I would never wish that on my worst enemy.
Don't do it. Okay, you guys can come back in. Yeah. Oh, no, he... yeah. It's Rick rolling. There you got Rick rolled on the QR code.
You smell like domestic violence.
You guys are my brothers and sisters. And look at the way you're treating me, right? You guys are my brothers and sisters, and this is how you're treating me right now.
Cloud farming! Cloud farming!
No, you're my brother and my sister.
I have nothing to you and you have
Yeah,
nothing
you
to
guys
me.
are my brothers and sisters. And despite all this hate that you're showing me for absolutely no reason, it's uncalled for. It's uncalled for. Don't engage. These people have been pushing me, shoving me. Yeah, they have.
You are so sensitive.
This individual here.
You are sensitive, aren't you?
I'm sensitive.
I'm very violent. This is what they want.
When we ask you to leave, you should leave. Simple as.
Much love, my friends. I'm not entirely sure why my brothers and sisters are swarming me, but here we are.
A politician who supports.
Here we are. You guys are surrounding me right now. Look at me.
Support for affordable housing.
Why did you walk into the middle?
The gay if you stay here, bud.
Why did you walk into the middle? What's wrong with you?
You're coming in our face. We're in our face.
You can leave at any time.
Look at how peaceful they are.
Much love, my friend.
You can leave at any time.
Much love.
You can leave at
Much
any
love.
time.
Much
You
love.
don't look at how peaceful everybody is, okay?
As you can see, my boy didn't get into the Liberal convention, unfortunately. You know, the Liberals just don't seem to like anyone that doesn't exactly agree with everything they say. Huh, isn't that funny? Anyways, thank you to Jacob Buston, trusted correspondent of the Weekly Rot. If you guys want to see more from Jacob, follow him on his socials, his Instagram, his Facebook, Bud It's Bustin'. He's been doing some breakthrough work out in New Brunswick there on glyphosate and the continued warfare, biological warfare being conducted on everyday citizens on a daily basis by massive corporations and government. Thank you, Jacob. All right, folks, and we're back to the Weekly Rot. We got a special guest today, a fella that I've been following for years now, independent journalist and content creator, James Lee, coming out of San Diego. How are you today, James?
I'm good. How's it going, John? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure. We are doing this little experiment called Independent News, and me and you have been on this journey for quite some time. I wanted to give the people watching just a chance to kind of get to know you. How'd you get started in all this kind of craziness in this world we find ourselves in?
How did I get started? Well, I'm going to give you the shorter version of this, which is basically I had an awakening through I'm sure a lot of people had awakenings in COVID. I was working as a consultant, a management consultant for big pharma. I saw some of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. I did not like it.
Wow.
And then so I just started putting videos on the internet, and here we are. It's now been 4.5, 5 years, almost 5 years to the day that I posted my first video on YouTube.
Can I ask you something? Do you find that time, because that's wild to me, you know, you're making me kind of rewind. It's probably been about 4 years for me now. Is time moving differently since COVID? Do you find that shit is just, or do you feel like time got stolen from us? Like, I feel like I look back and all of a sudden I'm 37 years old, James. Like, how did this happen? What is happening with our conception
That's a great question. I don't know if time slowed down or stopped, but I certainly view my life, you know, as a before COVID, BC, or AC after COVID. I certainly have that in my brain of like, oh, look at I remember the good old days before COVID, before all the shit, knew everything was going on that was jacked up. And then now here we are, and it seems like everything, I have to question almost everything. I'm like, is the news covering this? Is this true? Or is there an ulterior motive for them to cover this story and amplify this story? All kinds of things pop in my head.
You know, and isn't that a beautiful thing? Because I do sometimes, I like to pontificate over a beverage at the end of our day, reporting the random news that we find. So I come back to this, like, you know, you talk about the awakening you had during COVID, and I'm happy to say I think that whatever they tried to do with that, you know, I'm not saying there wasn't a pandemic. There very clearly was. I noticed even my own cough has changed. So, you know, having said that, it became an exercise of an experiment of control, in my opinion, and I think it backfired. It ignited people like you, James, into starting to like ask the right questions. How important is it today to have independent sources for news, do you think?
Well, it's as important as it ever was. I think we just have more access to it now, and we're seeing a huge information warfare where this war didn't take place before because they had control of the entire territory. When I mean the mainstream did. Now you have new guys popping up, yourself, me, a lot of other different guys starting to give their, I guess you can call it their version of the events, right? Because we're all kind of looking at the same things, but I might view it from a different lens. I might bring in different sources, and that changes the perception of what's going on. And now it's as hard, but I would say it's as hard as ever to stay independent, because I think you probably feel it, right? You have a really sizable audience, beyond 1 million, and people like that, I see them being kind of picked off one by one to say, well, come join us, we'll give you a nice cushy life. You can say pretty much everything you still want to say, but there's a couple of issues, when we tap your shoulder, you're going to fall in line for those couple things. But other than that, you're super independent.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I actually, I had a fellow creator, I'm not going to say his name, Alex Kellerman, but he told me that his manager actually advised him not to ever collab with me. So, it's like you got to take these steps to grow the channel and grow the audience, but at the same time, you start getting these, restrictions placed on you. Now, you've been doing a lot of work, James, on food and the additives, if you want to call them that. I call them chemicals that they've been putting in our food. And this is kind of a two-pronged question I got for you. So, when we talk about doing our own research, I find it hilarious that now that's been vilified, right? Oh, doing your own research is dangerous. They're basically saying, don't read. So we've come full circle. So I want you to comment on that, and then just maybe give an overview of some of the developments over the last week with RFK Jr. and with some of the bans that they just announced, I think, yesterday.
So I think there's a lot of positives and negatives that have come out in the last week. I'll start with a positive really quick, because I think that's a big win. It shows that if we get enough eyeballs on something, things happen, which is the banning of artificial and synthetic food dyes, the red 40s, blue 5, yellow 6, whatever these things are, getting them out of the food supply, because they've shown to be, massive this is where I would back off and say, okay, I'm not a scientist. This is where okay, you don't know what you're talking about with these synthetic food dyes. They're safe. Well, I say, well, they're safe, but a lot of people are getting sick. They're getting, hormone disruption. There's people getting ADHD, all kinds of stuff that are tied to these things.
Yeah.
And so this is definitely a good thing. And we have a bunch of other countries that don't have this. So this is a good development. Now, on the flip side, there are some worrying things that I've looked into recently. One of them being glyphosate, which is the key ingredient in the weed killer Roundup.
Yes.
That's a huge one because that's, at least in the United States, that's being sprayed on 60% of the crops that we grow.
Correct.
Specifically, a lot, heavily in corn and wheat and soy. So a lot of the staple foods that we eat are treated with glyphosate. And this is where, once again, I was watching an interview. You'll find this funny, actually. The head of PR at Bayer, who makes glyphosate, they're the top manufacturer, they're definitely paying attention and listening to us. Because one, they said it's 100% safe. There's no ties to cancer, no ties to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, all this stuff that people are bringing up.
Heard that one before.
And they also they threw in there this little bit here, and this ties back to people's distrust of NGOs and such. They said the WHO says it's causing cancer, but do you trust the WHO? Who is the WHO? They're not a regulatory body.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I think because people, rightly so, are distrustful of organizations like the WHO. We've learned through COVID, right? There are certain agendas that they are prioritizing that might be not so good for the entire health of the world, but I'm sure they're doing some good things too, right? And this is one of those situations they're saying, hey, there's some links to cancer here that they called out, but now it's being weaponized against the people because they've listened and said, oh, okay, it looks like people don't like the WHO. Now let's cite them and say, well, look at these guys.
It's like the snake eating its own tail. You know what I mean? Like it's actually kind of hilariously disturbing, if I may say. Now, I just want to quickly say glyphosate. I was out in New Brunswick, Canada for 6 months this year. I learned a lot about glyphosate out there because the major oil company that pretty much employs everyone in that province, called Irving, sprays glyphosate all over the forests. When did it become standard practice to put petroleum products on fucking food? Like, when did this happen? Why is this happening, do you think?
Well, that happened. There's actually, we don't have to speculate on that. That there's very detailed progression of what happened here. So glyphosate was introduced back in 1974 by Monsanto, which was acquired by Bayer in 2018. But they introduced it in 1974 to kill weeds. It was marketed as a miracle weed killer. And I would say the application or the adoption of that wasn't dramatic up until the 90s, which is when Monsanto introduced what they call the Roundup Ready crops. So Roundup is the weed killer product. So Roundup Ready crops, which are genetically bioengineered to resist glyphosate. And that's when the use of glyphosate exploded. And then that's when we started seeing a lot of ill health effects coming from it. And once again, I will point out that according to the manufacturer Bayer, it is 100% safe. There are no ties to cancer, except I'm going to also point out that there have been 180,000 lawsuits filed against Bayer, specifically about the links to cancer, and Bayer has had to pay out over $12 billion in damages to people that have gotten sick from Roundup, glyphosate, but it's 100% safe, as they say. It's so safe, once again, that more recently they have been putting cases through the Supreme Court. They have been lobbying Congress at the federal level as well as the state level to make it illegal to sue Bayer, linking glyphosate to cancer. So it's so safe that you're not allowed to sue, and those are exactly the actions that an honest actor would take. That's the sign of a confidence in a product. I would have to say is that you can't sue us if
And
it
don't
goes
you
bad.
dare try and boycott Israel.
And that's where I say, hey, I'm not a scientist.
I said, don't you dare try and boycott Israel. Reminds me of that as well. Sorry to cut you off, James. I'll let you finish.
No. All I was gonna wrap up with is, I'm not a scientist, but I can see the links here. You don't have to be a scientist to say, well, if the product is so safe, why are you getting sued? Not only getting sued, but you're losing the lawsuit.
You don't. You also don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that when governments create legislation to protect a company from a certain liability, it means that they're probably guilty. Allegedly.
Well, the government, actually, they wrote a letter. There was a recent letter, which I covered in my video, that was sent from a bunch of senators. And they said that we need to deregulate. We actually have overregulation of glyphosate, and that it's leading to potential food insecurities. They said glyphosate is necessary to produce the amount of food that we need to service society. And so if the activists get involved and say that we should remove glyphosate from the supply chain of food, then that could lead to food insecurities for the underserved population, for minorities, all this stuff. It's like, you don't want to be a racist now.
Yeah, right. If you don't support glyphosate, you're racist, you're homophobic. Well, listen, at the end of the day, James, I know the government's utmost concern is ensuring that the people have access to affordable food, which we can see, very reflected in the modern day grocery prices. I paid $20 for a thing of ice cream and a pack of Tic Tacs about 20 minutes ago. So I think things are going real good in that regard. Moving on to one last topic, James, to have here with you tonight. So we have next week a very large guest coming on. Her name is Jasmine Mooney. She is the Canadian who was detained by ICE for 17 days. So I just was curious, what's the buzz down there in San Diego and America in general? Are people still supporting ICE's mandate? And what do you think about the fact that they're able to, apprehend people without explaining to them why?
Yeah, so that's a tricky topic, and I've actually been doing some digging on this, because one thing about the media that you have to understand is that it's entirely partisan. So everybody is doing partisan news, meaning that they're picking stories and they're highlighting stories that are good for one person and bad for the other. In this case, right, we have a lot of what you would call the mainstream media that's more liberal leaning, and they want to run stories that make Trump look really bad. And so they're highlighting all of these, I think, horrific cases of even U.S. citizens being detained by ICE and not given due process. And I'm trying to, and then so I did some research looking back if this was happening before, and apparently it has been happening all throughout, the last couple decades, even when Obama was in office before then, that there were mistakes that were happening with ICE, and they were grabbing people off the streets that were not, supposed to, that didn't commit any crime. They're not a gang member. They're not illegals. But that wasn't really covered in the news. But now that it's being covered, it is alarming. I mean, I would have to say my personal belief is that we need due process. I think anybody that argues against due process is not for democracy. We need to say, hey, if I grab you off the street, you need to have your day in court. We need to be able to prove the crime against you. It can't be like, oh, you're wearing a Chicago Bulls hat. Even though that guy, probably not necessarily a good dude, and I'm talking about Kilmar Garcia Abrego, he had files, he apparently beat his wife, allegedly, right? Allegedly, his wife filed a restraining order, this kind of thing. So I'm sure he's not the best of dudes, but you can't just say, well, this guy is wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and now he's MS-13 and he needs to go. There needs to be an actual documentation of, okay, this is a gang member and he's committed X crime, and now we're going to deport this guy. That's my feeling. I think that's when you start to see it being politicized. And I would say that for the people who are more on the MAGA side, who are supporting this, saying, hey, this is not a good deal. We need to get rid of these people. It wasn't that long ago when people who weren't wearing masks were saying, hey, you are a terrorist to society. We need to remove you guys from society. So I would say, hey, if the regime changes really quick, which it does, from time to time, you don't want these same policies weaponized against you to say, oh, you didn't take a vaccine, you didn't wear a mask, and now we're we're going to deport you for it.
Nail on the head. Yeah.
That's my
no, you nailed it, James. And like, I would just kind of just say, like, at the end of the day, you know, that's really interesting. You blew my mind a little bit there. I bet if you do go back, the stats are the same, but now they're just shining that light on it, right? And it really creates an echo chambers. You just sent me down a rabbit hole. I'm going to be doing my own research on that later today. Because like I said, we have a very...
Look up the numbers. I mean, there are the cases under Obama, and then same with the. I would just throw in. This is kind of a different topic, but an RFK Jr. thing. I don't know if you've seen that people are getting up in arms because he's doing the autism study, and they're saying, okay, that's they're creating some kind of data breach, and it's invasion of privacy. But Obama had a similar thing going on where he collected a bunch of people's data for a study as well. So those things aren't necessarily novel, but they're novel in the way they're being covered right now to say, oh, this is an overreach. And it kind of fits it. It's a narrative. We live in kind of a narrative-driven society where now the narrative is like, oh, we're being authoritarian, we're doing this and that. And all that may be true, but I would argue that we've been authoritarian for quite some time now. It's just that we didn't view it as such, or the news didn't cover it in a way because their guy was in office, so they didn't want their guy to look like they were authoritarian, right? If you watch Fox News, right, Obama was a big authoritarian, but if you watch, NBC or ABC, New York Times, Obama was this very liberal human rights figure. And I think some of that is happening right now, and I try to stay nonpartisan above that bullshit because I think none of these people really represent us, and say, hey, I just ask people, it's like, do you want these same policies to be weaponized against you? If there's something that the other side doesn't like you for, whether it be the vaccines, the masks, whatever else that might come in the future, do you want to be grabbed off the street and say, all right, you're going to El Salvador because we don't like you?
Which flavor of authoritarianism would you prefer, right, folks? It's like we got the blue flavor and the red flavor over here. Listen, James, at the end of the day, I think you are a level-headed ally in this continued movement. Thank you for the work you do. I just want to add one quick thing on the ICE stuff. Go figure, a 3-letter agency given tremendous reach and mandate is maybe overstepping a bit. Gee, that's never happened before in the history of countries, or specifically America, has it? It's funny, the same people that are calling for the disbandment of the FBI support to the death ICE, and I just find that democracy at its finest. I would just add also, I don't know if you've been seeing the El Salvador prison satellite photos, but they're digging massive pits beside the prison, and there was maybe a pile of unalived humans. It's undetermined at this point. They did remove the entire facility from Google Maps for a couple days. So probably not a great thing to get into, to start sending Americans to that El Salvador maximum prison. But hey, I'm just a dumb Canadian up here holding it down in winter Mexico, snow Mexico. I should add, James, there will be a tariff on this conversation. I'll send you the bill after we end today. Where can the people find you? Where are you popping? You got any projects you want to pump right now, my friend, before we let you go?
Yeah, well, I think people can follow me everywhere depending on whether they like horizontal videos or vertical videos, but I'm certainly going to be devoting a lot more effort into YouTube, which is I'm going to have both videos that are horizontal and vertical, depending on which format you like, a little bit longer things, a little bit shorter segments that I make. So it's all going to be on YouTube at 515149 James Lee spelled L-I. But that's the same handle for all of my platforms, so you can go check out Instagram, TikTok, as well as X. I'm basically everywhere. Appreciate the support.
Hey, man, keep up the good fight, and we'll talk soon. And guys, watch out for the glyphosate and watch out for ICE. Take care, James.